Transamerica, and I have Kevin Riviera, the senior underwriter at Transamerica, and we will be going over some underwriting topics. Kevin, go ahead.
Well, good morning, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to get out and address some folks. As mentioned, I am with Transamerica, Associate Director of Underwriting. I manage a group of 11 underwriters that's basically responsible for handling the business that comes through from particular marketing channels. Business usually comes in and we'll get it from our new business team. They're fairly quick at getting business over to us. They're expected to get applications. Once we receive them, they're supposed to get them to us within like a 2-day period. And then we are staffed, so we're addressing those cases within 2 days of when we get them from new business. Right now, I've had surprisingly little vacation over the summer, so we're actually reviewing new cases within around a 24-hour period, which is really good. Cases are assigned out to various underwriters, and we'll just do the initial review, order requirements, and handle the cases accordingly as they come in. Most cases that we'll see that involve a little bit more extensive underwriting with some medical history, cases such as heart disease, diabetes, asthma, things along those lines, they may require attending physician statement ordering. But we're doing the best that we can to try to limit our APS ordering, because the 3 reasons that we hate doing those is they're expensive, they take a long time, and then when they come in, you have to read them. And that also takes a long time. So it's not very cost effective for us to go out and get doctor records. So we do everything we can to avoid that. Once we're done with the case, we'll send it back over to our new business team and get it out to the field for any type of additional requirements that may be necessary, whether it be an amendment, payment, whatever other delivery requirements would be necessary. Our average case, if it does not require doctor records, can usually be done within somewhere between 8 and 10 days. Attending physician statements do usually lengthen the process, but we've been getting pretty good responses with our internal unit getting doctor records in, and we've been getting those usually between 15 and 17 days, sometimes even less than that. So basically that is our soup to nuts underwriting process from start to finish. I know that's a very high level. I can go on and talk about a lot of commonly seen conditions, but what I'd prefer to do would be, if anyone has any questions or issues that they sort of see commonly, I would love to be able to address those specifically and talk about what you really want me to talk about, rather than what I can just sit here and drone on about. So are there any questions about issues that I can address specifically?
Kevin, one of the questions that we have is, how is Transamerica with diabetics in general?
Very good question, and we've been actually getting a little bit more aggressive with diabetes, trying to find ways, because you're seeing a lot of diabetes, especially when people start to get over age 50, 55. People are starting to have problems. The insulin level breaks down, and you'll start to see some sugar levels creeping up. We've been trying to find ways to offer credits for diabetics, so it's not uncommon to see somebody that's diet controlled or even on a mild medication. If they're in their mid-50s or older with well-controlled sugars, they could easily get standard rates. So we've been trying to stay as aggressive as possible to find credits and ways that we can look at those cases and pick out the more favorable ones and get them standard rates.
And what are, I know that there's a lot of times where we'll be working with agents and they'll say, they'll be giving us the client's information and they'll say, oh, well, he's diabetic. What are some trigger questions you can think for agents to ask to make sure we're getting all the information needed to send to the underwriters with diabetics?
Well, the gold standard right now for rating a diabetic is their hemoglobin A1C. A lot of people, when you're diabetic, you're going to know what that number is. So if they've got an idea of what their A1C number is, that's very valuable information. We've seen cases where somebody gives us, my A1C has been in the range of 6.5 to 6.8. I'm on this medication. We get lab tests, and they come in and they show good control, and we don't even order doctor records. We just approve it.
Okay.
So that would be the most important piece of information that we can get. The other two things that we would really want to see with a diabetic would be how long ago were they diagnosed and what medication are they on. There's a big difference between somebody that's on injections to control their situation to somebody that's on diet or a mild oral medication. So that's really the most valuable information that we could receive on a diabetic.
Okay. Let me see here, look for some other questions. What about tobacco rates? How do you feel Transamerica is as far as, well, I guess another big question I see here is with the like the e-cigarettes. How do you rate for like tobacco users and e-cigarettes?
It's curious that you're asking that question now because that's really becoming a hotbed of conversation in the entire insurance industry, really. And we've got our chief underwriter and our chief medical director. They're actually reviewing our position on those. Right now, any type of a nicotine-containing product is rated as a tobacco rate.
Okay.
But there are certain things like there are some hookah pipes that don't necessarily use a nicotine-producing substance. So do you rate those as tobacco or non-tobacco? Right now, that is the topic of pretty intense conversation internally, and we're expecting to have a more firm position on that here in the next week or two, certainly by the beginning of fourth quarter. So as of right now, I can tell you our position is that any nicotine-containing product is considered a tobacco rate. But where we're going to be in a week or two, stay tuned. Hopefully we can come out with a little bit more compatible, competitive, and actually appropriate classifications for the handling of these cases.
Okay. Back to, sorry, another question popped back in. Back to the diabetes. What's the top number for A1C rates?
Well, an A1C of like 7.0 or less can pretty confidently be considered for standard rates.
Okay.
You start getting at 7.5, you're very borderline. Anything over 7.5 is usually going to require a rating. But under 7, somebody in their 50s that's been diagnosed and well controlled for a couple of years, they could easily be standard.
Okay.
Anything over 7.5, you're looking at a rating.
Okay. Okay. Another question we have is, what about depression? What are, if an agent's meeting with a client and they release information that, you know, they've battled some issues with depression, what are some questions that the agents can ask to get all the information from the client?
Again, the most important thing to know is the medication that they're on and how long they've been followed for. Somebody who, say, just lost a parent that's dealing with some emotional issues there and needed a medication, mild medication to help them sleep or just to help them get through the day-to-day activities, that's certainly not a very concerning case.
Okay.
But somebody who's been on injectable antipsychotic medication obviously is going to be a lot different. So the length of time they've been on it, if they have any information as to the reason why they've been on their medication and actually what the medication is, that's very helpful again with when dealing with emotional issues. We see that quite a bit, actually, especially when we're running a prescription drug check. Somebody that's going in to get dental work, they'll sometimes be given a sedative, and it's going to show up on their prescription drug check. So the reasoning behind why they're taking the medication, that's very important, and exactly what the medication is. So
Okay. Okay. Let me see here. Some other questions we have. What about stents or heart issues? How do you rate? How do you rate, and what are some of the questions to ask for clients with
with
heart concerns?
I'm actually glad you asked that one. With heart disease, we have a there's an underwriting manual that's used and very well respected widely through the industry. It was written by Swiss Re, but the way that they view heart disease is a little bit more conservative than we like to view it. So our medical directors got together and they wrote their own guidelines for coronary artery disease.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily follow what a lot of the other carriers in the industry use in terms of evaluating coronary artery disease. We try to get a little bit more aggressive based on treatment, medications that they're on, have they had a normal stress test. Likelihood is you're never going to get somebody that had some sort of heart impairment back to standard. But we've got some ways that we can try to apply credits based on they've lost weight, they've got their blood pressure in order, they're taking a beta blocker. Things along those lines would enable us to get somebody a little bit more of an aggressive and more competitive offer with heart disease than some of our competitors.
Okay, awesome. What about clients' height and weight, their build? How do you feel underwriting is with that for Transamerica?
You know, it's almost like I fed you these questions because you're hitting a lot of very good hot buttons that we're actually working on rather current. We just actually in the last couple of weeks revisited our height and weight chart. And there, I believe, for our Trendsetter LB product, there was a new height and weight chart that was provided to the field that got a little bit more aggressive. We could also consider if you're within like 3 to 5 percentage points of a target weight and everything else on your case looks good, we can shave a couple of pounds based on like cholesterol level, blood pressure, family history. If all of those remaining items look favorable, we can shave a couple of percentage points to try to get you into that next best class. So that's, again, a very timely question and something that we're trying to be a little bit more competitive with in terms of our guidelines.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Kevin, I don't show any other questions. Do you have anything else on your list that I haven't caught quite yet?
Well, I just wanted to, we have a program and a presentation that we go through from time to time with our field partners, just a tip or two on getting things through underwriting a little bit more quickly. And I just wanted to share maybe one or two of those items just to give maybe some tips and suggestions on how to get things through underwriting. Most important thing that we always see in underwriting is, and it's basically our ears and eyes to the field, is the application. If the application comes through and it's complete, all the questions are answered, and we get as much detail as possible on the application, that really speeds up the underwriting process. You could avoid amendments. You could avoid any type of phone calls or delays from the new business team. That's huge. And also, if you provide as much detail as possible regarding some of the items I mentioned before, like what medication they're on, how long they've been on it, and even things that may not make complete sense, like if their occupation is a little bit different, and we need to get some details on those items.
When you say, sorry to interrupt you, Kevin, when you
Go
said
ahead, please do.
occupations, what are some like hazardous occupations or things that we should be looking out for, that agents can be looking out for with their clients? What are some hazardous occupations you can think of?
Well, a couple of occupations that have come into the forefront recently, obviously any type of law enforcement that deals with explosives handling or any type of negotiation type law enforcement, occupations that involve somebody working at very high height, like construction workers working in high rises, or like dam workers or electricians that work at very high height. Really, those are the ones that jump out as far as historically, those types of occupations. We've also been getting, especially from some of our colleagues out west, we've been getting occupations of people that are now legally working in the marijuana industry.
Oh.
And along with some of the guidelines that we're revisiting on tobacco, we're looking to try to figure out how do we handle these guys, because, you know, a couple of months ago they were a drug dealer, and now they're a legally employed person in a recognized industry. Mm-hmm. So we've been seeing cases like that, and right now our answer is we have no idea, but we're working to try to come up with a firm position on those. We're rating them case by case basis right now, but the more common ones that you'll see are any type of law enforcement that involves like explosives handling, hostage negotiation, or special weapons, and those types of occupations, plus construction workers or anyone working at a high height.
What about bartenders?
Bartenders, it really depends on the establishment that they're working at. Bartenders at your restaurants that are, you know, usually closing up by 11 o'clock and are home at a reasonable hour, they're standard. You could even get preferred consideration. Bartenders that are serving at primarily liquor establishments that are usually open well into the early morning, they're looked at again individually. Some of them may require just limiting them to standard rates. Some establishments have actually been rated, but
wow,
those are getting a lot fewer and further between. So
okay. Another couple questions that popped in. Foreign travel. How are you with foreign travel or pilots too?
Well, I'll address both separately. Actually, foreign travel, we're among the more competitive and creative underwriting teams in the industry, because we've got an entire international underwriting team that's really just dedicated to working foreign travel. The rules and regulations regarding foreign travel, I mean, basically you can click on CNN and you'll find something that's going to change your position on foreign travel. The area of underwriting is very volatile, not in terms of it could be, you know, a decline, but it just changes very quickly. So we've got an entire team that's basically dedicated to keeping their finger on the pulse of what's going on with foreign travel. So we can get a little bit more aggressive and creative with some of our offers because we've got that much more of a depth of knowledge on that entire issue. So I think that's a definite advantage for us here at Transamerica. As far as pilots go, Again, we do our best to stay as competitive as possible. We revisit guidelines regularly regarding pilots. Any type of pilot that's regulated in terms of they're flying for a commercial airline or even for a regular charter company, they're eligible for preferred consideration. Anything else, we would have an aviation questionnaire that should be available at our website, and I would just include that with the application. That gives us all the information that we're really looking for, like how long they've been flying, how much they're flying per year, what type of instruction they have, and do they have any other type of certifications that would make them a better risk. And things like instrument flight rating, air traffic rating, if they have those more favorable certificates, we may be able to get more competitive and let them be considered for preferred rates.
Okay, okay.
I'd also mention that aviation is the only exclusion that we offer. So if somebody's rated for aviation, they can get an aviation exclusion rider on their policy, which would mean that if they left the ground while they were piloting a plane, they would not be covered for insurance. But any other type of death would be compensated.
Okay, okay. Let me see here. A couple more questions popped in. Is there any difference in diabetics when you're considering these clients? Is there any difference between the oral medications and the insulin-dependent clients?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Insulin is usually used when oral medications fail. Either that or somebody was diagnosed very early in life, usually somebody that's a juvenile diabetic, which when they were diagnosed at age 18 or younger, or sometimes it'll be 25 and younger. Those individuals are usually on insulin, and they have a little bit more of a serious condition. Somebody that starts taking insulin in their late 60s because all the oral medications have failed, they've either failed or they've developed a tolerance to them where they're no longer effective. So they'll be rated a little bit higher because the medication itself is a little bit more of a strong medication that's needed to control their condition. But again, we would be trying to look for ways to give them credits and find different competitive advantages that we may be able to apply so we can get them the coverage that they need in a, at a price that they can afford.
Right. Another question that came in, what about neuropathy due to diabetes?
That's usually a indication of a less than optimally controlled condition. So if they've got some neuropathy that's starting to develop, if they've got any type of condition that's involving their eyes, like a diabetic retinopathy type condition, that's usually indicative of a condition that's less than optimally controlled. So we would really want to see doctor records and see how well they've been historically. Is this an indication where their control is going, or is it something that was an indication that they were just being diagnosed and it was a symptom that's no longer present? So that's where we're going to be relying on the history notes that we would get from the attending physician.
Okay. Sorry, I've just had a few more questions come in. How does Transamerica look at citizenship?
That's, again, we would be reviewing a lot of those residency visa classifications with our international team.
Okay.
They do have a number of different I guess, categories where people would fall based on their visa status. You need to be in the United States legally in some form, whether you're here on a temporary visa, permanent visa, green card, applied for citizenship. There has to be legal documentation establishing that you're here with permission. But other than that, there are a number of different visa types that are eligible for consideration. And again, we've been able to get pretty creative with some people regarding their status, whether they be applying for citizenship, in the process of getting their green card. So documentation is going to be very key with that, whether they have I-94 documentation, which is something that's used by the Immigration and Naturalization, the INS. So that type of documentation, if that could be provided with the application, that would go a long way.
What about how long do they have to be in the U.S. before they can apply for coverage, just in general?
That's going to be different for every individual, really, because some people, they could have been working on getting to the United States for quite some time and already have established residence, established employment, and if they've been here for a period of 3 or 4 months, they could have the stuff that people have been also here 18 months and don't have. So there's really no, it's only, it has to be a minimum of this amount of time, because different individuals can qualify depending on the amount of work that was done prior to their arrival.
Okay. And what about, do you accept the ITIN?
That would be, I'm sorry, I was in a conversation with one of our international folks, just making sure I was advising correctly. And that, again, is something that's looked at individual consideration.
Okay.
Are they here and working legally? And is everything, see, that's really only a permission for employment or permission to earn income and pay taxes, but that really doesn't speak to somebody's residency. So we would need to know what their residency status is in addition to them having that documentation. So if they've got that ITIN number and they're also here on a work visa or some type of visa, we would need to know both of those pieces of information.
Okay.
That's why we have an international team, because there are so many different questions that could come up with those types of, and we go to them pretty regularly and ask these questions, and it's a really, really good resource for us to have as a team.
Oh, great, yeah. What about active military members?
Active military members, with a lot of the activity that we've got overseas sort of winding down, active military members are becoming a little bit easier to underwrite. There was a time a few years ago when just about everybody that was enlisted would have to, people always used to say they would take their turn on the beach or take their turn in the sandbox and go someplace over to the Middle East and have a tour there. If there are no deployment orders in place for somebody, or if there are deployment orders and they know where they're going, if they're going to someplace like Germany or another that's non-combat location, they're perfectly eligible for consideration.
So but, if they know where they're going and for how long, or if there is going to be combat, then it is possible for them to get coverage while they're deployed?
Well, they would have to be here in the United States and finish all of the documentation before.
Okay.
We can't do anything with like somebody overseas, but they would have to be here and complete all the documentation. And again, we've seen cases where like a spouse will have power of attorney for another spouse, and those cases are just not acceptable. We can't do those. But
Okay.
if they have orders to go overseas, but the most common one that we see is Germany. A lot of people will be going over to the Air Force Base over in Germany, and we'll see people that, I've got an 8-month assignment over there. I get military coverage, but my wife needs more insurance, and those people are insurable as long as everything is completed while they're here in the U.S.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, I think that's all the questions I had so far. Sorry, I just had a few pop in while you were talking. I apologize.
That's not a problem. The one thing that I did want to stress that I try to emphasize when I speak to anybody in an environment like this or face to face out in the field, communication is very important with your underwriting team. The field is our eyes and ears. Basically, they see the applicant, they can meet the applicant, they're aware of special circumstances that we may not be aware of. So we need to know as much as possible so we can try to help get the coverage that these individuals need. Obviously, they wouldn't be talking with an insurance agent if they didn't need coverage. And we're in the business of providing people with coverage. We just have to make sure that it makes sense for everybody from a financial standpoint, from a mortality standpoint. That's what our job is to try to make sure it makes sense. But we don't make any money by declining cases, so it's not our intent to decline cases. So if there are circumstances that help a situation make sense, we're willing to listen. So I can't stress that enough. I've had situations in the past where there was an applicant that was declined by just about every carrier under the sun, but he came to us and he was part of a group that had a lot more applications that could be placed in force. The individual had just had a kidney transplant, and he was an obvious decline. But he didn't care how much that it cost. He just wanted to be insured so he could be included as part of this larger group. We gave him a table P plus a flat extra $20 per thousand, and he said, I'll take it. So we ended up getting a sale, we got the larger group, and we put coverage on an individual that was basically a decline by every other carrier in the industry. And I'm proud to say that he's actually still alive.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're willing to listen. If you've got circumstances that are a little bit different, I had another example that I can give. I had a case where there was a busboy that wanted $1.2 million in coverage, and we were like, seriously, a busboy? They make $20,000 a year. This busboy made $250,000 working at the Four Seasons Resort. So he got his $1.2 million.
Wow.
So we just need to know, and if there's no section on the application that could adequately summarize your client, send us a cover letter. Give us a phone call. Send us an email. Let us know the special circumstances that apply to your particular client. To us, it's just an application, and we have to review so many of these per day and, get through as many as we possibly can. But to you, it's a family. It's a client. It's somebody that actually needs this coverage. So the more you let us know, the more we can help. So that would be the thing. If I could stress anything as much as possible today, that would be it.
Great. I had one more question come in. What about clients that are wheelchair bound, or if they were paralyzed and that's why they're in the wheelchair? How do you handle cases such like that?
That would depend, again, on the reason that they're in the chair. I've had very good friends that were in a wheelchair that when he was 19, he dove into a swimming pool and broke his neck.
Oh, my God.
And he is well-adjusted, not depressed, works, has his own home, perfectly insurable. He may get a slight rating just because of the accident increase. There's an increased possibility of accidents. There's also an increase because of being sedentary so long. There's circulatory issues that come into play that may be a concern. So there may be a slight rating involved. But he would still be eligible for coverage at a pretty competitive rate. People that are involved in more degenerative conditions, loss of limbs as a result, again, we can go back to diabetes. I know of individuals that have had, lower extremities amputated and they're wheelchair bound now as a result of diabetes. Those individuals are a little bit more of a concern and they would probably be declined. So it depends on the circumstances of what put them in the wheelchair. Is it a progressive condition? Have they adjusted to the fact that they're in this chair? Have they been there for a while? And people that are well adjusted, that have incidents that cause the condition and not degenerative concerns that put them there. There's room to get people coverage that are in wheelchairs.
Okay, well, Kevin, I think that's all the questions I have for today. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm definitely grateful for this opportunity to speak with you and your audience today. If there are any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I work on the East Coast, usually from 7 till 4:30, but we've got underwriters here usually until probably 5:30 Central Time. So if you've got any questions, definitely reach out to us and we'll be here to try to help.
All right, perfect. Well, thanks so much again, Kevin. For everybody that's listening, if there's something that you have a question on and didn't feel like it got covered, feel free to give your life marketer a call. Our number here is 800-365-8208. And again, just ask for your life marketer. Kevin, thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.